When was the last time you felt stressed at work? Is it consuming every aspect of your life? And do you want to live a more balanced and rewarding lifestyle? Well, according to the American Institute of Stress, 83% of American workers believe they suffer from stress related incidents at work, and 25% of those surveyed say the stress that they experience at work is the number one stressor in their lives. Donna Starr is an executive coach and the author of Unsuccessfully Successful: Lessons from a Workaholic, a Corporate Exec, a Single Mom's Journey to Live a Balanced Life. Starr has spent over 34 years in the field of talent development, and she now specializes in helping high-performing corporate executives and audiences become more aware, empowered in their decision making, and making sustainable changes from the inside out. This, my friends, is all about balance and achieving time freedom and flexibility to live the life we want to live, and making sure that we connect with the inner self that makes us unique, individual, and constantly contributing to the conversation of progress both at work and at home. Star helps people to remember what they're passionate about in the first place, and leading them to a place where they can discover that once they can. And she joined me this week to have a comprehensive conversation all about workplace balance, diversification, diversity, and equality, and what it truly means to live an equitable and rewarding life. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Donna, if you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program. And I'm super excited about talking to you about how we can all live a more balanced life at work. Great to be with you this afternoon. And thank you so very much for being here.
I am so happy to be here with you.
Absolutely. Now, Donna, tell me about what makes your work to you fascinating, because I know you help people sort of live a more balanced and approachable life when it comes to helping them live a more sort of equal life when it comes to work-life balance. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about the work that you do and what makes you so fabulous.
Well, thank you for the fabulous comment. I was in corporate for 34 years and I did really well, but I was never really, I'm not saying I never enjoyed any aspects of my corporate career, but I beat myself up a lot. And I think that had a lot to do with my upbringing. I'm not going to blame that on my corporate environment because we all bring our prior lives. But there's a lot of stuff that I didn't have to do. I thought it had to be hard to be successful. And it really doesn't have to be hard. And so my mission in life is to help other professionals realize that it doesn't have to be so hard. We don't have to go to every meeting. We don't have to miss every ball game to be devoted to our companies. We only have one life. So we have to create the boundaries that allow us to live a more balanced life. I don't know that there's any such thing as work-life balance. I think it's always a juggling act, but we can take some specific actions to help make it better.
Yeah, and I know that you help sort of high performing corporate executives and audiences become more self aware of those things and become more empowered in their decision making process, which will help them make sort of sustainable changes to live a more full life. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about how we can live a more sustained life while also feeling accomplished at work.
Well, I think the main thing is if you're going to come to me and say, can you work on my resume and my networking skills? I might not be your person. But if you want to work on what drives you from the inside out, I'm your girl. I'm your woman. Because I think everything starts from how we're feeling about ourselves. So primarily, I really work on people's confidence, how they answer an interview. So if you go to an interview and you're like, I need this job. If I don't get this job, I'm going to be homeless versus, I wonder if this job is the right fit for me. If you go to a interview more on equal footing, even though, of course, the interviewer or the company has more power because they get to make the decision, you also get to make the decision whether or not this company is a good fit for you. So a lot of the work I do is a mindset shift. Do you want to go to the gym or do you need to go to the gym? Which one is more likely to happen? And the wanting to go to the gym is more likely to happen. So those are some of the things I work on with my clients is help them become more self-aware of how they hold themselves back. And that is sustainable. Those are sustainable changes when you can catch yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And Donna, I'm a big believer in the concept of making authentic human connections and really meeting people where they are in order to create an environment of sort of cohesion and productivity at work. So tell me about valuing people and really knowing the value of your workforce and the people that work for you, because I believe that's critically important, isn't it?
Oh my God. Well, it's all about people and relationships, right? I mean, if you are, so much comes up when you ask me that question, but my biggest skill, I think, is connecting with people. Like I'd say that that's probably your ace skill up your sleeve is going in and evaluating situation and figuring out what people need. This one seems a little quiet. Is that person okay? So there, you can't underestimate. And I think COVID was super hard for companies to establish those relationships because those relationships were happening on Zoom. And I do think there's some merit to seeing people in person. From not that I'm not you need to be in the office 5 days a week person, but I don't think work gets done unless there are good relationships because people can hold work up if they don't connect with you. And conversely, if there's a problem and you have a good relationship with somebody, they can really help you through the situation. So mentoring is relationship, coaching is relationship. All of that has to be about fit and how we work well together. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it actually did. And I have to tell you that I was fascinated to talk to you today because we work in sort of a similar vein and process. So I don't know if you did any research on me prior
I did, yes.
to the interview, but I was born with what's called spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy. Simply means that I don't have enough oxygen in my legs to walk normally. And, Donna, outside of hosting this podcast, I work with organizations to amplify their inclusive culture at work for folks with disabilities and really driving home the point of a competitive advantage of if they're willing to embrace inclusion at work. So how do you think we can better diversify workforces, which include folks with disabilities and other marginalized groups?
I completely agree with that. So I would be curious to hear how you've done that because there's this yes, I want it, and then there's the making it a reality.
Well, yeah, to answer your question, I think the biggest thing I tell employers is making the business case on how it will affect their businesses in terms of reducing turnover and increasing morale and productivity. Donna, I used to be the ambassador for a project with the Ontario Chamber of Commerce called the Discoverability Network, which was the province of Ontario's first ever online job matching portal for folks with disabilities and employers to get connected. And the number one question that we would always get from the at the chamber when we ran the project was, how much was this going to cost my business? And I would say less than $500, and they would all look at me and say, "What? That's as simple as it is." And when we go into the positive benefits of hiring folks with disabilities in Canada, if you hire someone with a disability, they're likely to stay on the job at a 72% higher clip than their non-disabled counterparts, and they show up for work at an 86% clip more than their non-disabled counterparts. So it's about educating employers and also showing them the business case as well. So I hope that answers your question, and thank you for interviewing the interviewer. Thanks for that.
Well, I think it's super important to understand the cost and the benefit. And I think anytime, my background, I worked at a company called Monster Board, monster.com, and worked on the ad agency side. So we were helping companies develop hiring strategies and then creating tools to make them more efficient. And so diversity, equity, and inclusion is always a conversation that we have. But I don't always see companies do a great job with it. I mean, not for lack of effort sometimes. Even veteran hiring was problematic on occasion. So it's just not always easy. So the fact that you said it's $500 and you went through it like very clearly, I mean, why wouldn't you hire somebody that's qualified if you were going to have reduced turnover and increased performance?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and the other thing is that it provides lends into innovation to run, because people with disabilities and other marginalized groups are used to solving problems, and it can provide your business or corporation a competitive advantage in that way as well. Absolutely.
So I love how simple you made it.
Yeah, one of the sayings that we had at the chamber was collaboration equals progress. So the more we collaborate, the more progress we make, right?
There's almost, 100%. But I mean, there's so many groups that are marginalized. There are people with disabilities, people of color, women, older people, people that may be overweight. Like when I did my research for my book, I found out that 1 in 4 hiring managers, now I don't know, I mean, I have a quote that won't hire Jewish people. Now, I was in talent acquisition for 34 years and I never heard that. So I think there's so many misfires in the hiring process for companies.
Well, it's an avenue to continue a conversation, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. And by the way, I think there's a lot of good efforts out there. I don't want to say that everybody is not, and so many legal requirements for hiring. And so there's a lot of legalese that goes into the whole process as well.
Yeah, but I do think if we continue making the case, Donna, I went to school to become a sports reporter, but my second choice in education, if I didn't go into journalism, would have been going into law school. So I always take a lawyer's mentality to those presentations to make the case and make my closing argument at the end of the book.
Well, I think you're a pretty persuasive guy, so I'm on Team Kevin.
Well, I appreciate that. And Donna, I'm also curious to ask you about What's the key to creating a happier workplace where people want to come to work?
Authenticity. I think a lot of things like having a wine Wednesday or a party on Friday or whatever, we had fun committees at work. We did a lot of things in my corporate environment, but I think when people genuinely feel cared about is when people enjoy their work, when people feel recognized. So it isn't always about money. It's not always about foosball tables. I lived through the .com era when everybody had, foosball and food, breakfasts and lunches and whatever. I think just genuinely caring about your employees.
Yeah, it goes a long way, doesn't it?
And it's sometimes so simple.
It certainly is. And now, Donna, we've reached the point of our conversation where I want to know all about the book that you've written, all the hard work that has gone into publishing your new book, Unsuccessfully Successful. So tell me all about the new book and what it's all about.
Oh, I couldn't possibly, but let me talk. No, I'm just kidding. So I wrote the book because I hired a coach when I got out of coaching school 4 years ago, and he said, you should write. You need an email list. You should write a couple times a week. And I was like, I'm not going to write any corporate person 3 times a week. They will never, I'll be deleted before I knew it. So I decided 3 years ago to write every 2 weeks, which I have religiously done. I've missed a few weeks here and there. And people seemed to like what I had to say. And then I signed up for a program called Manuscripts through Georgetown University. It used to be the Book Writers Group. And if you stay with the program, which is pretty rigorous, you will have a book in hand a year after you sign up. And it kept me accountable. It kept me on track. And I had a lot of stories to tell from I was a single mom. I had 2 kids, I had a bad divorce. I worked for a very, very, very entrepreneurial driven culture, very competitive driven culture. And I was often out of alignment to the point where by the time I left my corporate career, I was no longer able to digest my staple food of salads. So my body was giving out on me. And so I wanted to write about that experience because I'm not alone. I had one post on LinkedIn about how I used to dream about getting admitted to a hospital so I could rest. And when I put that post out there, so many people reached out to me and said, I feel the same way. I just need to rest. That isn't the way I think companies ought to run their people. But the responsibility isn't on the company. If you're a workaholic, they benefit from that. So you got to take care of yourself.
Yeah, it's so important for self-care and finding your inner center when everything else comes caving in on you. So I'm fascinated to ask you, when you have a quiet moment to yourself, what do you most reflect on when it comes to sort of finding your own inner center of getting back to the person you authentically are individually?
That's such a good question. And so what I may ask my clients, that can be years worth of work, that question that you just asked, right? Because first, my goal is to make people more self-aware, right? That they are running probably on autopilot or on the definition of success that means more to other people than to them. I have to make money. I have to support my family. I can't be weak. I can't show emotion. I have to lift and take care of all these other people. So once we strip some of the shoulds and the judgment away from their thinking, we can get to some core stuff that says, what makes you you? What makes you happiest? And then a lot of people play with, in their quiet moments, they let their brains torture them, right? Like they beat themselves up. So a lot of the work I do with my clients, and I talk about in the book, is, Kevin, if I came to you and I said, my boss just was not so nice to me today, you may say to me, well, let's play that one out. What would you say to me if I came to you and I said, hey, Kevin, I had a really crappy day today. Or you would say, hey, Donna, you look like you had a crappy day today. And what happened? And I would say, and my boss just like was not nice to me in a meeting today. I bet you I'm going to get fired. And maybe I should start looking for another job. What might you say to me?
I would say to you, let's work together to find the space where you're most productive, but also content with how you're being treated at work. I would work with you to find a mutually beneficial path forward. And Donna, the reason I say that is I have a staff of personal support workers that come work with me on a personal basis to make sure that I physically exercise and I have somewhat of a social life and I get out of the house. And all of whenever I hire a personal support worker, I ask them if they're looking for a partnership or a paycheck because people that are just looking for a paycheck I'm not necessarily thrilled to work with. I look at hiring my support staff as a mutually beneficial partnership. So that's how I would answer the question.
Yeah, so that's a great response. But what will happen is a lot of times is you'll give your friend more grace than the person alone in their thoughts will give themselves. So you might say, hey, let's work together and figure this out. And so you're like, yeah, that stuff happens. Let's figure this out. But alone with your own thoughts, you may be like, wow, I must really be horrible at my job. So the two, and so what I try to do is align the way you would treat me, Kevin, with the way I would treat myself. And those are very often at odds. So when you talk about what I work on and why I wrote the book, that's really primarily what I'm trying to do is get alignment. Because I was out of alignment when I left my job. I couldn't believe I couldn't digest salad. It was crazy. My body just was like so out of whack because I wasn't supposed to be there anymore.
It's almost like putting a life puzzle together, isn't it?
It is. That's such a great way to look at it. I wrote that down. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, feel free to use it. I'm a mutually beneficial society, or at least I try to be anyway. But Donna, I'm also fascinated to ask you about women's equality in the workplace. And women really fighting for the value that they believe that they're worth in the workplace. How do you think women equality has advanced, and how much farther do you think we need to go?
No, it's so funny you asked that question because Melinda Gates was on TV this morning, and now her latest initiative at the Gates Foundation is women in politics. There is, I don't think, a black female senator.
No, not since Kamala Harris left to become vice president. I think
okay,
correct. Yeah.
Right. So, where change happens is a lot of times in government. So, separate from that, I think women are they're very underrepresented. I follow the McKinsey report, and I think COVID really pulled a lot of women out of the workforce because they couldn't do it all. They couldn't take care of their families, work, and be home and be responsible for everything. It was just too much. So we did lose a lot of women during COVID. So a lot of the ground that we were making with women in senior leadership positions, I think we lost. But in terms of equality, if I'm coaching a man and a woman, and I coach both, women have so much people. This is just a generalization, but women believe that they need to please people. They're uncomfortable talking about their gifts and themselves, and they think it makes them look bad. And a guy comes in a room and they're like, hey, yeah, I did this, I did that. They don't have a lot of the stuff that women are, I don't want to use the word patriarchy because I don't always like that word, but I think women have to start advocating for themselves and stop waiting for someone to advocate for them. I think women have to take their power back. I think they have to know how to show up and use their voice and not feel uncomfortable about toting their accomplishments. Because no No one's getting out of here alive, and no one's coming by and saying it's your turn. Very few times does that happen. You have to ask. You don't receive unless you ask. So I do think women hold themselves back on top of very patriarchal society that we just is our system. It's just the structure we live in.
Yeah, and that I always tell business people who ask me how to create an inclusive culture, I tell them that we make time for the things in life that we prioritize. So if you prioritize yourself and building a culture where you put yourself as the main winner in life, then you can make more progress because if you live your life as the sort of main character of a movie, then
Yeah.
when you reach the climax, it's more rewarding, isn't it?
So much more rewarding, right? When you are much more of an active participant.
Absolutely. And, when we talk about career pivoting, Donna, I'm also fascinated to get your answer on how you think people who are going through a career pivot can really remain focused on creating what I call the next chapter of difference or a chapter of success in their professional journey. If they're going through a career pivot, what do you think the keys are there?
Well, like today, I was on the phone with a woman who was a creative director at a baby company that is no longer in business. And she hasn't done creative direction she's done it in retail, but she hasn't done it for other industries. But the skills are transferable. So I think first, when I talk to my clients about what they want to do next is what do they enjoy? What skill sets are transferable? And accountants can be accountants at any type of company. And so there always are transferable skills. I think the military does a really good job they have like a military translator, and it shows you that these skills would apply to these outside of the military. And everybody has transferable skills. It's finding out what you want to do. I hate to use the word just passion because people overuse it, but if you have a choice to pivot, I pivoted at 56 years old. I left a 34-year career and I had no next job lined up. And I signed up for coaching because I wanted to fill the void in case anybody asked me, what are you going to do next? I wanted to have an answer. I was embarrassed to be completely free of any job related things. And then I went to coaching school and fell in love on the first day. But the second thing I would answer your question with is allow for some space, because you need time to really think. You need some decompression time if you're pivoting. You might be in a lot of stress, so you have to give yourself some thinking time. But I work really closely with a lot of people in transition, and it's a puzzle. I'm going to use yours, Kevin. It's a puzzle. There's no straight answer on that other than you have skills and we can find you another job. One of my favorite questions to ask is, do you think you'll ever work again? The answer is yes. Then we work from there.
Yeah, just very quickly, I'll give you a story. So,
I love that.
I used to be the job developer at the YMCA here in Windsor, and then in April of 2019, I got a call from my boss at the Ontario Chamber. And I had left the chamber because my contract was up and I had the opportunity to move over to the YMCA. And then Louis De Palma, who was my boss at the time at the chamber, called me and said, the guy who took your job is moving to Quebec for a government job. Do you want your old job back? And I said, absolutely. So after I got off the phone with Louis, I had given my 2 weeks at the YMCA. And a week before my contract, I was to sign my contract, it got suspended because of COVID. And part of my job with the part of my job with the Chamber of Commerce was going out to businesses and hosting community events to tell them about longer in need for my position. So I told myself in May of 2020, when my contract was officially suspended, that there was only so much Netflix I could watch in a day, Donna. So I started this podcast, and I've hosted it now for almost 3 years. I've uh, hosted or interviewed over 750 people for the podcast in just over 3 years, and almost 400,000 people have watched it. So I must be doing something right, right?
You're doing a lot right. Thank you.
So yeah, it's just the power of pivoting. In fact, I was just addressing an annual general meeting on Tuesday, and I told them the power of pivoting uh, means that you can reinvent yourself even when adversity strikes. I told them that your resilience is the answer to the test of adversity, right? Because if you have a resilient spirit or a game plan, it's my belief that you can get through anything. So that's just my spiel on resilience and how I made my
I love it. I love it. I agree with you.
So there you go.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I just wish I don't have a canned answer for that because everybody's different.
Well,
So,
yeah, I always tell people that your portrait of success is going to be painted differently than mine, right? So,
okay.
and since we're on that subject matter, I'm also curious to pick your brain about defining success because, as I said, it looks differently for other people. And I always tell people that their only level of expectations they have to meet are their own. So, because if you don't have your own sort of foundational expectations, it's hard to rise to the level of anyone else's, whether it be personal or work related. So, how do you think we can better personalize our standard of expectation?
I also think that's highly individual, right? That's why I named my book Unsuccessfully Successful, because you can have all the trappings of success and still be on the inside not aligned. You can be miserable. You can be unable to digest food. So I really work with people to figure out what their definition of success is and work from there, because a lot of people feel a lot of expectations that are on them, and there's a heavy weight on a lot of people that I coach. And I try to remove that weight from them with with our work together, because everybody deserves to be happy. We have one life to live. One. Like we're not getting out of here alive. So like, let's figure out what we can do to make ourselves reasonably happy and realize that we still have to live in the real world. I mean, there's a pragmatic aspect to defining success, right? But I honestly, if I was going to define success, it's the freedom to make the decisions that are best for me.
Yeah, because it's different for everybody. You're right. And Donna, when you look at today's workforce and the sort of state of it, I'm curious to ask you about what sort of responsibilities do you think employees or excuse me, employers and companies have to really get people excited about coming to work? And how big do you think collaboration plays into that as well?
I'm doing a team building workshop, not next week, the week after. And I think Simon Sinek said it is, teams aren't people who work together. Teams are people who trust each other. So I think that if companies can have a trusting culture, a lot more work will. I love that quote. I do. I think if you are working with people that you don't jive with, that's one thing. But if you don't trust somebody, you're not going to do your best work. So I think creating a culture where people feel, I don't want to use the word safe, but they feel valued and they can trust their coworkers, you go a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to combine my last two questions because they're interrelated. I'm fascinated to ask you about why you love interacting with people and helping them maximize their own personal and professional potential. But my last question to that, as well as when you look at your own sort of personal and professional legacy, how do you want that to be defined?
Can you say the second part of that question again?
Yeah, I was just curious about your overall personal and professional legacy and how you wanted that to be defined.
My legacy is to help people live a more connected to themselves life. I mean, if I don't want to use the word balance, so I coach people all the time, and I coach CEOs down to, when I say down to, entry level professionals all the way up to C-level professionals. And to see a person transform after working with them. There's no, you know, some entertainers may say when they're on stage, there's a rush that they get, and you may know more about that than I do hosting a podcast. The rush that I get to be able to help people feel better about themselves, it's indescribable for me. So if I could make everybody in the world, if I could scale my business so that everybody felt a little better about themselves, I think the world would be a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Donna, tell me, if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Well, I have a website, D-Star Consultants. I'm very active on LinkedIn, Donna Star Coach or D-Star Coach, but I write almost every day. I haven't written today. And I'm also active on Instagram. So you can get me through my website. You can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and then my book is available for sale on Amazon, Unsuccessfully Successful.
Oh, well, fabulous. Donna, from one person who loves communicating to another. I thoroughly enjoyed the time I got to spend with you this afternoon. I want to thank you for your work and workplace and people development and for joining me this afternoon. It's most appreciated.
I enjoyed being with you. You are so an inspiration. I really enjoyed this moment.